Alrighty, guys, for the last time, for a little bit, let's talk about Creature Commandos. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion for the final episode in the series, episode 7. I believe it was called The Very Funny Monster. This is going to be a spoiler discussion, so if you have not seen episode 7 of Creature Commandos, and we are also going to be discussing the series as a whole towards the end of the segment, so this is your full spoiler warning before we get on to the spoiler discussion. And without further ado, let's get into it. So guys, I think it's more important, I like to do these recaps of just how I've been feeling about the show before most of my spoiler discussions, but I think it's most important here just to kind of give a recap of where we're coming from. So, I started the show with some anticipation because James Gunn is a very talented writer and he is very good at what he does, and what he's been doing in the comic book, movie, and TV space has been the same. It's been, let's take a ragtag group of heroes that you don't think you're going to care about, try to make you fall in love with them, and then by the end of the show, you're like, oh, I totally get these characters. I'm on board with them. Let's go on more adventures with them and see what's happening. So that's been James Gunn's MO. Guardians of the Galaxy 1, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, then he did the Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, the Suicide Squad, then Peacemaker, Season 1, and now then Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, now Creature Commandos. He's taking a little bit of a break from that to do Superman, and then wouldn't you know it, he's going right back to that exact same thing with Peacemaker Season 2. So I was a little nervous going into this series because I thought, is this just going to be the same old kind of thing? But I thought, look, James Gunn is really good, and for the record, I say this as if I'm sick and tired of it, but I've really liked all 5 of the previous properties. I all 3 Guardians films I like pretty much. I think they're really solid. I really like the Suicide Squad, and I really like Peacemaker. So I was like, okay, you know what? If Gunn can just deliver and do the things he does well, then maybe this will just be an entertaining show and maybe something more. And so I went into the show. First 2 episodes, I thought, nah, it's fine. It's okay. It's just kind of the same thing. Episode 3, it's fine. It's kind of the same thing. Then episode 4 came around and I was stunned. I thought, oh, this is what we were waiting for. Like, this is James Gunn saying, you thought you knew me, but I have some tricks up my sleeve to really get you invested in these characters that were kind of boring, in the first 3 episodes. And then episodes 5 and 6 happened, and I was like, oh, we're right back. So episode 7 comes around, and I'm sitting here going, please just stick the landing or surprise me or I don't know, just try to maybe do something that's a little bit different from what you've been doing. And right off the bat, I'll say this before we dive into the full spoiler discussion here. Episode 7 is exactly the same as most of the show. I am really disappointed with the show, not in terms of its quality. I think the show is fine, honestly. In a thumbs up, thumbs down spectrum, I would say thumbs up, thumbs very middle, but maybe slightly tilting up, maybe, I don't know. It's a well-written show. It's fine. It's got all the same things that James Gunn has, and maybe I'm just tired of it. Who knows? Maybe with Peacemaker Season 2, I'll be more on board just because it's a continuation of Season 1, which I liked, and I like John Cena, and I think also with longer form television, you have more time to develop the characters and get to know them a little bit more. This series, with each episode just being 22 minutes, felt so short and really rushed, and that makes episode 4 all the more amazing. Episode 4 is incredible, in my opinion, of Creature Commandos, but the rest of the series, I'm kind of over it, I'm kind of over it. So I watched this episode and I was like, it's the same. It's just the same. And so, not to say that I think the first project of the DCU is an abject failure. Not at all. Not at all. I don't think so. It wasn't for me. I just don't think it was for me. Because I know a lot of people really love the show. And for me, I just wasn't for me. So we'll talk about some of my more detailed thoughts as we go through the episode here. But just wanted to give that sort of summary up front. So, here we go. Entering episode 7. It is, the last character we haven't gotten any real backstory into, other than maybe Rick Flag Sr., but I guess he's not really a big character in this show. He really didn't become a big character after episode 5, I think, and then he was just out. So it's a Nina Mazursky episode. It's kind of hard to follow my notes sometimes because, especially with these kinds of shows, you're going back and forth between the past and the present. So, just trying to work through those parallel time streams and whatnot. But it's funny because there was a scene where the bride refers to Phosphorus as Ghost Rider. I just thought that was kind of funny. And then we have Frankenstein, and Frankenstein is chasing after the bride, and you feel bad for him, but then you don't really because he's not a good person. He's a pretty crazy bad person. So it's weird because a lot of these characters you almost want to feel bad for them sometimes, and then you're like, but you're also just doing terrible things. So it's kind of a weird dynamic there. So then we dive into the real backstory of Nina Mazursky and how her father really tried to care for her. I guess she had some lung problems, and then he turned her into a fish, as as one does. The mom in this flashback is quite harsh, honestly. You get it. You totally get that this is a very hard thing to see the family go through. But that mom, maybe it was just the fact, again, when you condense these episodes so much, the backstory becomes so, just it feels so rushed. And so maybe that, if we got to see this play out over a little bit of a longer period of time, it would have felt a little more earned. But the mom's just like, I'm done. I'm leaving. And I was like, whoa, okay. I mean, that's interesting here. And what's interesting too, as I was watching, so because then we cut back to the present day, right? Because we have, so the first flashback is basically Nina's birth, and then kind of figuring out how she's going to survive, and the mom leaves, and then they figure out, okay, we're going to turn her into a fish, and she's going to breathe underwater. And then we head back to present day, and basically the princess is swimming for some reason, and the creature commandos are like, okay, we got to go kill her. And what's interesting about this show is that, honestly, even Weasel, right? They've given us the backstory in very condensed form for every single character in this show, and I don't feel any differently about any of them than I did at the beginning of the show. And that to me feels like what the crux of the quote unquote failure. And again, I don't think the show's a failure. For me, why I didn't enjoy the show as much is because I'm watching these characters and I'm like, at this point, having seen the tragic backstories of the Bride and of Weasel and of Dr. Phosphorus and of Nina Mazursky, I don't feel any differently than I did in episode 1. Because in episode 1, they have the same characteristics. Bride is Bride, Phosphorus is, sadistic Phosphorus, Weasel is just dog-like crazy Weasel, and Nina was just nice Nina in the beginning. And so I think that really, it boils down to that for me, is that you showed us the backstories for these characters. That's great. That's fantastic. But I don't feel any tangible difference. I feel like the characters, yes, you objectively understand what they had gone through, but it didn't really reach me. It really didn't hit me in the way where I was like, oh, okay, got it. And so now I feel this, great attachment and sympathy to these characters. And of course, James Gunn has said in interviews, the goal was not really to make you sympathetic to these characters. He said what this series was like Guardians of the Galaxy without the sentimentality. And yeah, I mean, you can totally see that. And maybe that just doesn't work for me. And that's totally fine. We get some more flashbacks to Nina Mazursky now. She's at school. I don't get, why are all the bullies in these shows, comic book movies and shows, such like the most exaggerated, worst versions of school bullies? It's like only the TV versions or the movie versions of school bullies. I'm thinking about Spider-Man 1 or Shazam, for some reason when they're bullying Freddie Freeman. It's like, why are they just such cartoonish characters? I don't understand that. But anyways, am I calling her a frog and whatnot? Like, the show wants to take itself seriously at some points, and it just wants to take itself so unseriously at certain points. And then I think it wants to take itself seriously, but it becomes unserious, and I feel like the balance just wasn't quite there. And yeah, I mean, sure, if the backstory is trying to make Nina Mazursky more sympathetic so that when she ultimately, kind of makes the turn and tries to go kill the princess, that you feel bad and you don't want her to do that, I mean, sure, that's there for me. But I feel like, it has nothing really to do with the backstory. You can't help but like Nina because she's literally the only character, and they call that out here. The Bride calls that out at the very end when she's talking to the princess. She's the only character who has any ounce of kindness in the show. So of course you feel bad for her, and of course, you tend to like her because there's no one else to like in the show. And I think that's, I don't know. Was that a miscalculation on James Gunn's part? I don't think so. I think he very much intended for that to be the case. I just, again, don't think it landed for me. So anyways, the backstory, the backstory is really sad with her dad dying in front of her. I didn't feel it as much as I did with the Weasel one, but yeah, it is sad. Then, she goes after the princess, and, Weasel tries to save the princess, and, Weasel can't swim. Callback, right? Callback to Suicide Squad. And basically saves the princess's life, who murders Nina. And at that point, because the whole deal is like, Waller's like, we made a mistake. And you're kind of like, no, but the princess is bad somehow. We also never pick up with Cersei again. So, yeah, I don't know what happened to her. There are a lot of things that just feel so rushed about it. Even the ending just felt super rushed. Like, okay, Creature Commandos 2, I guess. It just, again, really rushed. Really, really rushed. So the princess, murders Nina, and there's more. All right, there's more because, Waller, again, says made a mistake. And then we have this whole scene where the bride's explaining the whole thing. And I guess it was all a setup because And I listened to the explanation, and I was like, this feels way too convoluted for a series called Creature Commandos, the way that it had played out. But I guess basically she was in league with Clayface, or she got Clayface to help her because, you know, she was evil the whole time. And I guess Cersei's vision was true. Like, the princess would have, you know, caused World War III or whatever. So that was true. But then she wanted to get them off the scent, so she basically tried to frame it so that, you know, oh, the doctor is crazy, like, she's Clayface and whatnot. And I guess, you know, that was the plan. And then the bride kills her because apparently Nina is her friend. And I don't know. I never felt that throughout the entire series. You guys will have to let me know in the comments. I never once felt that the bride and Nina were friends. I felt like maybe she started to tolerate her towards the end. And that's the show. I mean, the bride and Phosphorus and Weasel just walk off, and then, you know, there's a little bit of a sting at the end where they, you know, Economos takes her into this room, and it's Creature Commandos. It's the new team. King Shark is back, I guess. I wonder if he's going to be voiced by Sylvester Stallone. Didn't sound like it in the scene. I don't know. I'll have to look it up later. But it's the new Creature Commandos. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, how it was renewed for season 2, and there you go, Creature Commandos season 2. So guys, look, as you can tell, I'm a bit over it. I think that there are a couple of things contributing to this. Number one, I don't know if this is the best format for James Gunn's quote-unquote formula. And I know it's not a formula. It's just what he likes to do, right? Take the ragtag group of heroes and turn them into sympathetic characters. I think what I mean by format is the formulation of it all, making these characters completely unsympathetic, basically. I don't think that helped, really, because then I just, what do I have to get attached to? Even in the Suicide Squad, Ratcatcher 2, even Bloodsport at the end, you know, Polka Dot Man, King Shark. It's like, I can get on board with these characters a little bit. This show really couldn't at all. So there's that. The other thing, though, by format, and what I mean by that, is that this show, and I'm not talking about animation at all. You could totally have done any of this in animation. It would have been totally fine. I'm talking more about the fact that these are 22-minute episodes, and it feels like the Spark Notes version of every single character is what we got. And because we got the Spark Notes version of every single character, and because, again, they're not super sympathetic characters, I just never got attached to them. So even though we had seen the backstory explicitly for every single character, I just never felt like I got on board. So again, you know, first project of the DCU, the real first project is going to be Superman, of course. So I'm not going to say that, you know, like, even if this show, because this show is pretty critically well received, right? So it's not, you know, everything's going fine. Like, it's all good. And if you guys love the show, totally fine. You know, I totally respect that and would love to have some respectful dialogue with you guys in the comments. Because again, it's just all how it hits us, you know, in different ways. But, you know, even if the show was terrible, and I don't think it's terrible at all, I'm very thumbs middle, you know, think it's totally fine, then I wouldn't have really changed my anticipation for Superman at all, because I know, I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty convinced at least, that James Gunn is toning down some of those tendencies for Superman. Now, how much he tones down his tendencies, because again, you cannot deny his track record. All good projects so far, you know, at least critically well-received projects, but we have now 6 examples of the same kind of tendencies in 6 different projects. Guardians 1, Guardians 2, The Suicide Squad, Peacemaker Season 1, Guardians 3, and now Creature Commandos. And he was writing then Peacemaker Season 2. So it's like 6 out of 7 projects with a little break in the middle with Superman. And I have no doubt he's going to do something a little bit different with Superman, because it's just not the same. But I don't know. I really don't know. So guys, those are my thoughts on Creature Commandos. Again, it doesn't make me any more or any less excited for Superman. It's going to happen, and we'll have to see how that goes. Let me know what you thought about Creature Commandos and whether or not, you know, you're looking forward to the next chapter of the DCU. I can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments down below.